Hi, this is Andrew with Good Space High Performance Builders. We're joined with Bronwyn Berry from Passive House BB, and today we are going to talk about the decision between retrofit and new construction. So Bronwyn, what goes into this decision?
So it's complicated because, there's always this fine balance. Primarily, I always like to find if there is an existing house on a property, how much of it is worth saving, and then of that, how much of that aligns with what really is the end goal of the clients, because that can be, that can lean either way. So
yeah, and budget decisions. Obviously, sometimes retrofit can be cheaper if you're not altering the house too much.
Yeah, I mean, really, it depends very heavily on like the bones of a house and if they're good and worth keeping, and still actually are in good shape. Because we found, I always do a pretty detailed set of as-built on an existing home. I do the crawl space. I literally crawl. You were surprised I mentioned
that's impressive.
that earlier.
I'm still very impressed by that, because a lot of people don't want to crawl under houses, but it's important, right?
It's really important. It tells you so much. Mm-hmm. So crawl the crawl space and the attic. That tells me, how's the foundation. Your health of a house really starts with how it connects to the ground.
Yeah.
And whether that's in decent enough shape to even consider salvaging, and then how the attic, how the roof's, connected, where the loads are, what the load paths are, again tells us, what's important to keep in place.
Got it. And then the age of the house must make a big difference too, right?
Interestingly, you would think that if it's older, it's harder to salvage, but sometimes the older houses actually are in better shape because they were built better and the lumber was better.
Yeah, certainly the lumber. We see that the lumber that they used was fantastic back then.
Oh,
and then,
it's magnificent.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm often kind of amazed that the difference. And then, houses basically from like the mid 40s onwards are
it's when we
touch
started
and go.
making new products, right? Manufacturing materials that may or may not be healthy or resilient.
Construction got fast and cheap and dirty. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the houses post 40s I found just are impossible to salvage as much as I would like.
Yeah. You hear about the one wall rule when people are doing a major remodel. What's that all about?
So unfortunately, that's largely urban legend. I think, there was probably once upon a time that in place, but most jurisdictions really don't adhere to that anymore. Mm-hmm. So, it has to be a very significant amount of the existing building retained to still be qualify as a retrofit from a planning and a permitting perspective.
Yeah, and I imagine each jurisdiction's a little different with their rules.
Yes, that's also something tricky for us as in the architecture profession to have to navigate, and it's a journey that you kind of it unfolds as you also decide what's worth keeping and what fits with the design that you really want and what the clients really want to get out of a project.
Yeah, so it's a complicated decision, case by case, different
Absolutely.
clients, different properties, and things get triggered though at some point. How much you can insulate and air seal.
Yeah, and what's interesting is the conversation's also really flipped to focus a lot on the embodied carbon, because this is something we have to really consider, and keeping as much of a building that you can is really important. And if we can keep the concrete in the foundation that's huge. So, you know, it's something, order of priorities. If I can keep a footprint and a foundation, we're really winning on the embodied carbon aspect. Lumber and walls, you know, not as much wood. If you can recycle it and salvage it, so you don't blow the embodied carbon that's in those materials.
Yeah, that's good. We've really been trying to think about that too, how much we can reuse, be reused, and then create a better building ongoing. Another thing that I see triggered between the retrofit is some of the codes can be a little bit different. So requirements for fire sprinklers, an existing house that's remodeled may not need it, or if you go to new construction, then you need fire sprinklers. Do you see other things like that get triggered?
Really, it's fees, you know, related, school fees, development fees.
Yeah.
So, you know, those can add up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So, you know,
And that's one that really varies with jurisdiction.
Absolutely. It can be high as 30 grand to 10, but it really can be significant.
Okay, well, thanks for that. It sounds like it's complex, but it's good to get an insight onto that decision-making process. Bronwyn, within Passive House certification, are there different programs for managing between new construction and remodel, retrofit?
Sure, it's a great question. Passive House does offer a certification for retrofits, and it's called Retrofit. And there's a number of different tiers that you can, you know, slot into that depending on your project. If it's a total retrofit, you can, and a gut retrofit, an extensive retrofit where you're kind of getting back to studs. You can do the performance pathway retrofit, which has an energy target and an air sealing target. If you don't have the opportunity to do that extensive kind of intervention, you can do a component-based retrofit certification, which is, you know, if you get to change some of the windows, make them Passive House certified, or if you get to install an HRV, it should be a, you know, certified product.
So you can do that along the way.
Exactly.
A Windows project, fresh air device project.
Yeah, well, there's actually, that brings up the third pathway, which is the phased retrofit.
Okay.
Which I think is a really interesting evolution of the Passive House standard, where one of my early projects, they didn't have that, and so we didn't get it certified because there wasn't an option to do phased retrofit. But now you can do that and get the building, you know, as your budget allows and as the building needs, you know, new roof or new windows, you can plan that into a longer term update of the building, which I think is really great.
Yeah, I can see advantages in that. Like I said, both budget and then, why replace a roof if your roof is not old and it's got life left in it? So that's great. It's good to have that there. So okay, and thanks Bronwyn. Thanks for watching, and watch some more videos.